Hello, Beau Leadership Group friends. Today, I'm going to talk about pricing and pricing like a pro, but I also want you to think about pricing in terms of you bet your life. My grandfather on the Beaulaurier side used to say, "You bet your life," and he had a bit of a French accent. And it stuck with me. Part of that exuberance and attitude, I think, translated to a transfer of emotion. And that transfer of emotion is sales. And sales is the ability to get somebody to pay a price for something, an exchange. And he, in that saying, you bet your life, underscore the importance of pricing and decisions when he was excited about something his kids were doing, all of whom were successful vice presidents, starters of companies, presidents of student bodies, presidents of bar association, very successful. They bet their lives and they treated their lives with that kind of care and exuberance and transfer of emotion. Today, I'm going to be talking to you about pricing, but the price you pay is what you get out of life. Let's begin with price. And in economics, we talk about pricing where a price you charge is the price that people pay for something. But in the pricing of a firm and when they're pricing a product, their widget or whatever it might be, if they lower the price, they should sell more, but they get less revenue per product. When you think about pricing like a pro, you have to be thinking about elasticities. And elasticities are when you lower the price. If something's very elastic, you'll sell a lot more. If something's inelastic, you might not sell that much more. And luxury goods are kind of the quintessential example of what is an inelastic product because if you have a Rolls Royce, some people they don't care what it costs. They just want the Rolls Royce. If you're the king of Saudi Arabia, if it's $5 million, you still want it. On the other hand, something that's more of a commodity like hamburgers, as McDonald's is displaying right now with the value menu, they can sell more when it's bundled and people have the ability to buy a hamburger at a lower price. And that goes along with people wanting to save money right now. But I also want to talk about the price for your life there, right? Is it healthy to eat McDonald's all the time? No, I think it's more of a treat for those of us that read what the ingredients of fast food does to your body. There's a big price there. When you're making decisions as an economics trained person like me, somebody that attempts to trade options, not a pro at that by any stretch, but I like to collect a premium when I trade stocks. The super wealthy side, people trade stocks, they get a little bit more extra revenue on the front end and the back end of their trades. And they're willing to look at whether things are overbought or oversold. And that's an estimation of demand, right? So big shifts in demand make big shifts in stock price. It's another example. So when you're buying a personal computer, the trade-offs are pretty huge, right? Do you want more RAM, more memory? Similar with a cell phone. Do you want more memory for your pictures or do you want to pay less? A gentleman I was talking to this weekend still had a flip phone. Guess what else he has? A big retirement account and an airplane and a few other things. He doesn't need to be at the beck and call of his phone. He's retired. So there are prices when you use your phone all the time and you're slouched over it. One of the prices you pay is what's going to happen to your spine over time. I visited the chiropractor today and I was able to do a small triathlon this spring. I'm in pretty good health, but I was needing some advice on how to sit better to avoid nerve pain because it was my lower back that was creating pain in my foot. How I slouched was causing me a price in my foot. Now, I bring all this together because the price we pay also the price we charge, right? So what are you charging? Are you giving up all your free time for that boss that wants you 90 hours a week for a dollar amount per hour? That's your price. Ed Milet does a nice run on what are you going to give up and trade in terms of your own values, right? Like some people will give up their dream for a price. You're giving up your dream. What's the price of not saying you love somebody one more time? That's part of Ed Milet's book. So saying you love somebody, the cost to you is nothing to say I love you to somebody. Yet why do we avoid saying it? A lot of these things are human nature. We're afraid, and people are afraid to buy something when it's super inexpensive. One of the examples in pricing is manure, fertilizer. If you were buying fertilizer for your garden, you might want some manure. A person will go out and pay for it rather than go to their friend that has a horse that would give it to them for free. There are also things that they do in the making a manure, believe it or not, so that it doesn't smell and some other things. The point is, if you take a pile of manure and you try and give it away for free, you're going to have a hard time. If you go out and you say $15 per yard, people come get it crazily. I had a friend who was in charge of pricing for Safeway. He was in stores. This is a crack up. People were setting up the cash registers. Scanning was a new thing at the time. And they were taking little pieces of wood, different sizes, and they were just taking the scan code through to calibrate the machine. And there were different prices on the pieces of wood to see how well they read, and then a different price applied to the different pieces of wood. It was just all ergonomics and how it was scanning. I was actually an expert in this area at one point in my life, optical character recognition and barcodes and 3D barcodes. I was doing things for Hewlett Packard and others, spectrophysics. But anyway, this guy was in charge of pricing at Safeway. He just happened to be in a store when they were calibrating the machine. And what he found fascinating is they were done calibrating the machine and there was a shopping cart there. So they put all the pieces of wood in a shopping cart. And customers were coming up and looking and seeing which price it goes with what kind of deal can they get on a piece of wood. And these pieces of scrap wood were just randomly assigned prices, but people wanted a deal on the wood. And so it just goes to show you that we're sort of funny as human beings into what we think has value and how it's valued. When you look at the Think and Grow Rich book, Napoleon Hill talks about you can get your dream if you have one, and you're willing to pay the price. Napoleon Hill talked about having a definite major purpose and having a willingness to pay the price, and then you can achieve your goal, any goal, as long as you are willing to pay the price. Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, the person can achieve. This is the gold edition of the Napoleon Hill text. It's been around for a long time. Let's go back to pricing on the professional level. On the one hand, you might have a price that is so cheap. This is the one hand. Economists have two hands. But on the one hand, you have a price that's so cheap that you're concerned about the quality of that product. On the other hand, you may have a pricing perception that it's too expensive. It can't possibly be worth that amount. But I'm here to tell you, as a professional pricer, that there is this confluence of the too expensive and the too cheap lines where you have a maximum penetration price in the middle. Up here, 100% of the people think the product is too cheap and they have concerns about the quality. Over here, they think 100% think it's too expensive and they wouldn't pay it. How does that work in terms of elasticities of demand? That's very complex. I'm not going to take the time to go into all that, but basically there used to be about 6 questions that the typical survey researcher would ask to get to that maximum penetration price. But after many years of doing that analysis, I can tell you that The price at which people find something too expensive, if you take that and take a cumulative curve, about 20% of the way up that curve is where the maximum penetration price is. And what does maximum penetration price mean? It means the price at which the price has no impact on decisions. You have on one side too cheap, on the other side too expensive. In the middle is where you're willing to buy. Well, what else is important? Also, you need to consider, are you talking to your brother in law? Wrong audience. Or are you talking to people that are interested in your product? So if you sell hi-fi stereo equipment and your brother-in-law doesn't care about hi-fi stereo equipment, you don't want him pricing your product. And we talked about before that the price of popcorn at the movie theaters is seen as brutally expensive. Well, that's how the movie theater makes its money. And guess what? Many of us buy the popcorn at the price that's charged because it's enjoyable to have popcorn at the movies and they're the only popcorn vendor. Similarly, at sporting events, there are long term satisfaction things that you also need to consider. So, one of the things that the NBA tried to do was reduce the concession prices and the parking prices and things so that people could have a better experience for an entire family. So, bundling a family package, for example. There are other examples where you might bundle things, but one of the things that we talk about in terms of pricing for printers is the price of the printer. You don't necessarily cover that with the initial purchase price. What you may be paying for is the consumables, the ink, the paper, the other things that go with that printer. I'm sure we've all been caught in that before, and there are a lot of trade offs that you make to decide which thing you're going to choose. A pro will also price things in terms of the trade offs in a technical way using things like conjoint analysis, which allows you to do trade offs and statistical analysis. Analytical hierarchy process is another tool that a professional pricer will use. What I worry about is the entrepreneur that believes their brother in law and prices themselves out of the business. The other person that we can talk about is the salesperson who caves on the first question of the price before he understands the situation. For example, you go to a prospect, doesn't matter the product, but the prospect says, that's too expensive. And the person immediately lowers the price. That's not necessarily helping the customer. They may have the money available, they just maybe don't have it right now. So a payment plan might work better. They don't want to diminish the value of the product either. They don't want you to not be able to do your best work. They still want you to be able to do your best work. Are you going to be able to do your best work at a lower price? Sometimes not. So you need to be very cognizant of it. So, what is a tip, a tool, a thing you can do as a salesperson? Say, right back to them, just pare it back. The price is too expensive. I've learned this from Zig Ziglar 40 years ago, but you just pared it back. The price is too expensive. So you can understand what their concern is. The price is too expensive because I want to buy 50 of them. Your response might be different than the cost is too expensive right now. What if you just build me next month for it, the same amount? You get the money, they get the product. There's no cost difference for you. Their credit's good. You know, they will sign the contract or whatever. There are all sorts of things that they could be saying when they say it's too expensive. Another example used in salesmanship 101 is they say the price is too expensive. You say the price is too expensive back to them, and they will tell you in what they're explaining that they don't understand the features and benefits. So you may need to explain to them how the product may save them over time. Think about those times when you're with somebody and you cave or you leave money on the table. And if you have enough pain with that, you can change your behavior because you do. You bet your life. For example, I was told by a mentor of mine, don't do work for your family. You're going to regret it. So what did I do? I did work for my family. I discounted it Not only did I discount it, and mind you, I was using staff and resources and all sorts of labor to get the project done for the family member, and I did it close to at my cost. But what I didn't factor in is what economists call the trade offs of opportunity costs, right? I could have done a full price project for somebody else. I didn't completely not know that. The person that was mentoring me and said, you don't want to work with your family, they also said it's going to cost you the same. You could be managing a profitable project instead of one that you're discounting for family. And your family's not going to appreciate what you do, like somebody who understands your profession and what the competition is doing. They may just want a deal, right? And everyone wants a deal, and it's tugs at your heartstrings to work with family. But here's the kicker: in my particular case, my family didn't use the research correctly. They didn't understand it, even though I did a presentation to them like I did to other people all the time. They weren't in the market for market research at all normally. And so some of the things that they took out from the research were actually verbatim responses from single people that said certain things that they acted on, and they changed their behavior based on what a couple of people said. And I tried as I could to say, that's not going to improve your revenue, but they didn't understand that it was just one guy said it versus, when you do a market research survey, you're looking for those areas where big numbers of people are doing things or people are willing to pay a lot. When you're talking about prices, your brother-in-law may not be in the market, but the person who's in the market for something be willing to pay more, like the Rolls Royce to the King of Saudi Arabia. They're willing to pay more. They're in that market. I can't afford a Rolls Royce. The trade-offs are too big for me. You can have a nice airplane for what it costs for a Rolls Royce. Not that I don't appreciate their pursuit of excellence and the product quality of a Rolls Royce. I do. And I appreciate airplanes that have Rolls Royce motors. It's one of the things that makes me drawn to real estate is that people that are in the planes that have Rolls Royce motors are often the same people that do real estate. Real estate is one of those things where you have prices and they're set professionally by market comps and different, basically three different techniques that a realtor uses to set the price of real estate. Real estate is one of those ones where location matters, interest rates matter at the time because that dramatically impacts your monthly payments. Right now, we're in a bit of a buyer's market. If you can get people to negotiate the price down because the interest rates are high, there's buyers and sellers markets in real estate. Where you are in the market makes a difference. What the housing supplies are like, that's basic economics 101, like we talked about before. Scarcity does bring prices up sometimes, but it's the perception of scarcity as well as anything else. Let's talk about perceptions for a moment. Perception is reality. Do people perceive that you have value? Again, the person that didn't want to pay the full price, it may be because they didn't understand what the value was. And a lot of salespeople talk about this, sales consultants, about presenting the value. One of the things that one of the most successful real estate broker in Las Vegas did is they pointed out the front door. Well, every house has a front door. It's not so much that the doors are even that great when they were pointing out the doors. It's he's attempting to make people remember it. So they remember the house and then they want to buy it. Being memorable is part of what you're doing when you're building that story and experience about the product and the brand story and the value and the perception of the brand. There was a time when BMW and Lexus, the JD Power satisfaction numbers were way higher on Lexus than a BMW, but BMW could still garner a higher price because of that branding perception. A little bit later, Porsche had that same branding perception, the top brand. Oldsmobile and Pontiac faded out in that same time period. You can't even buy them anymore. GM discontinued them. And so just a little bit prior to that, Hyundai was thought of as a tin can throwaway car. Now look at Hyundai and Genesis. They're leading the market. Kia, people didn't believe in the quality of Kia. People weren't interested in Korean cars. Now, a big part of the market is Korean cars in the United States. Perception is reality. For a lot of people, they don't understand that they can look into quality and quality assessments like JD Power or other market research that can give you an idea of reliability and things that might add value and decrease your cost of ownership. A price you pay is cost of ownership. Back to my wealth advisor. I had a wealth advisor, another mentor, and the price of not having mentors is significant, right? And not having good ones. This particular wealth advisor and investor, one of the things that I came away with them that was really profound in my life is brushing one's teeth. He had people that became very wealthy that were clients of his that didn't take good care of their teeth. What does that mean? It meant that they were rich and they saved and pinched their pennies and they didn't eat well and they didn't brush their teeth and they had a lot of sugar and things in their diet. And then they lost their teeth and they lost their ability to have those steak dinners and things that they were saving their money for to eat in retirement. So that's a huge price in the long run, the price of not brushing your teeth. Tuck that one away. With wealth advisors, it's important to understand that there are fiduciaries and non fiduciaries. Many people who are wealth advisors, quote unquote, wealth advisors, do not have a fiduciary responsibility to take care of you. They are working for their mothership and they want to make their company profits. And even legally, you could say they're trying to make money for their shareholders and their board of directors. And they aren't trying to make money with you. They're just trying to sell you on something that's adequate enough so that you'll buy it. The Wolf of Wall Street and other things have shown that this has been really true for a long time, but the market is shifting so that true fiduciaries are showing up. And that fiduciary is somebody that has that actual title, is somebody that's looking out for you and your best interest and helping you to invest in the complex markets that are quite volatile right now. If you don't have a degree in economics and an MBA like me, where you can have difficulty ferreting things out, I'd like to think that Nvidia is going to keep going up forever, but who knows, right? Markets go up and down, and you need timing in the marketplace. You need to understand where you are in the business cycle. You need to understand how to diversify your portfolio. I had a lot of friends that didn't understand the price of diversification. So I had some very smart, very wealthy individuals on paper. They're making good money, had a big portfolio, had nice houses in the suburbs, nice cars, but they had all of their money in Portland General Electric when Enron went bust. Not even the same name as Enron, but Enron took them down too. So they lost everything and ended up having to work 10 years longer. Don't let that happen to you. Diversify your portfolio. And a true fiduciary will help you to diversify your portfolio. And they'll also round it out and move it around so that it works for you. And you also need to be considering the tax consequences of the different types of products that there are out there. My first wealth advisor, the guy that did teach me about the teeth things, he wasn't a true fiduciary. And he took me for a run on an insurance product as part of what he was doing. It honestly didn't pay that well for me to be with him. I would have been better off being in a Vanguard fund now, like VUG, or an index fund like QQQ, where it's diversified and many stocks are part of that portfolio. And again, when you're looking at your retirement and saving for your retirement, which is the price you need to pay to retire, you have to put 10% or so away, double digit percent at least, especially if you're working for somebody else and you don't get big chunks of money at a time. If you're just getting minimum wage, it's critically important. And the earlier you start, the better you're going to do. And that's something that is an unfortunate thing, even in Social Security. My wife makes more money than I do this week and last week and the week before that, but my social security is going to perform better than hers because I made a lot more money than her earlier in life. Similarly, if you put money away in the first 10 years of working, thousands of dollars, you put thousands of dollars away, that compounds and works for you. Whereas somebody starting in their 30s or 40s, they may never catch up to you. If you're in your 20s, take advantage of the compounding, the magic of compounding. This is something that frustrates me, and I'll move to this next item, which is tipping. What is the price to pay a server? I am going to solve this for you. Not really, because there are a lot of variety of answers that work well, but here's one of the ones that kind of ticks an old guy off like me. So let's say you have a server and they're pretty good and they hand you the iPad or whatever and it has an option for 18%, 20%, 25%. It's like back in the day, the common etiquette was 10% for not super good service and 15% for stellar service. So we have changed quite a bit and people are making more bigger wages. So back in the day when 10 to 15% was true, you might be making $2 an hour where minimum wage was 350. And the reason they could pay you $2 an hour is because with tips and things, you would work your minimum wage up. Now there are all sorts of laws and things around this that I don't want to get into, but let's think about the difference between 15% and 18%. Now, the compounding of that for a wealthy individual who's going out to dinner every night, going to lunch every day, going to breakfast every morning or coffee with the coffee group they go to, that person, if they compound 3% across 3 meals a day, 7 days a week, it's a tremendous amount of money. And servers will notice, hey, the wealthy guy doesn't tip as well as the other person. Sometimes it's because they understand the compounding of their money and they're trying to have their money compound in their retirement account. Or maybe they're trying to follow the biblical principle of leaving money for their grandchildren. Either way, if you understand compounding, 3% is a ton when it's compounded across multiple things per day. It's like the guy that bets $1 per hole and doubles it, and by 18 holes, he's a million in the hole to the other guy. You know, the compounding is real, and you can look that up. I won't go into that. It's been covered by many people. However, I do have a mentor who says you don't even tip at the end. He comes in and plunks down big tips to everybody he comes into contact with the day before an event. And then he comes in that same day and he tips again because he's trying to have the best customer service possible for anybody who's with him, not just himself. He says he doesn't want to take anything for chance. He gets people's attention with the kinds of money that he lays out. Another person I traveled with to the other pole of the world, he was giving tips to people all week long that were quite sizable. And he was a wealthy individual. And he knew that these people that were serving us were not wealthy. Some of these people barely had shoes and clothing because they were that poor. He was giving them life-changing money when he was doing what would be a reasonable tip in the United States. But he was adding a little bit to that and tipping people up front and making a point to tip them directly and being kind to them. What happened to him at the end of the week is those people gave him big gifts and thanked him. And I'm sure they're still in contact with him because he was literally changing their lives. How much you want to tip depends on a lot of factors. I don't think a server is going to say, oh my gosh, I can't believe they tipped 15%. And they're going to write you down, oh, that's the 15% guy. And, you know, they may, and I may be the boomer that doesn't get it. But at the same time, if you charge me 18% every time I go out, I don't want to go out very often. You're killing the business owner to serve the server. In some communities, it makes sense that they actually spell it out that you're helping them with the retirement of an employee. So if you want to go to this restaurant, we're asking you to give a higher amount. And sometimes they have a tip for service that's built in and then a tip that you are expected to do on the other end, similar to when you have the tips for large parties. I will say that pricing on certain things like parking are interesting because people get frustrated looking for parking, but people don't realize and don't do the research that it may cost you the same amount to park in a garage that it does on the street, but you want to park right in front of the business. One of the things that you should be thinking about in those situations, I believe, is you're getting your steps in, right? If you park a little further out and you get more steps in, you're going to do better in the long run and have some legs for when you want to go on that vacation, when you have saved up and you have retired and you have not left all the money on the table and you are able to retire because you've understood pricing, you've understood that you want to have your money working for you, that there's a price to the opportunity cost of not investing and saving as early as you possibly can. These are some ideas on pricing, and I hope that you can put them to use. In my experience, one of the best ways to look at it is to, like the Dave Ramsey concept of live like no one else so you can live like no one else in the long run. If you look at it as God's resources, I think it will be a little less cumbersome for you not to give 25%, save that money and put it into retirement for your grandkids or for the education of your grandkids or to help buy some real estate to help people live well in real estate. There's a lot of things, a lot of opportunities, a lot of opportunity costs, but I hope that you will understand that you bet your life when you price things and when you think about pricing. Make it a great week.